episode of What's Happening Now with Laura. I must offer an apology for having not been here last week, and that is simply because sometimes you need to take a little personal space and a little personal breather. So I had a few things that I needed to take care of, and so I wasn't on last week. I want to say thank you to all of those who reached out to me, wondering whether I was okay, whether I was ill, because you stay tuned in every Tuesday, and for that I am eternally grateful. Just a few persons I want to say hello to before we go into this evening's program, because oftentimes I leave it to the end and I run out of time and I don't have time to go into it. So I just want to say a few shout outs to certain people. The first person I want to say a shout out to is little Miss Haley, 5 years old. She's one of my most avid fans, always keeping her mom on the ready to listen and to watch and to follow through. And she stays up until the show is over. I want to say hello to little Haley. I hope you like my hairstyle, by the way I've combed it out today, because I know this is one of the things that you look out for. I want to say hello to Mervin, I'm looking out for you today. A couple days ago, I went down to Choiseul and I wanted to get some chaises jaunes, if you know what that is. Chaises jaunes, you know, the straw chairs, sorry. And I went down to Montgouge and I met a few colorful characters. And let me just say a shout out to those people. It is interesting that all of the men that I met on that particular street in Montgouge were all gainfully employed, albeit self-employed, but gainfully employed nonetheless. But they all did almost the same thing, which is the chaises jaunes, the straw chairs that we used back in the day. That is now become guamicier right now, because it's so very time consuming to build. And so they're not very plentiful. So demand is high, but the supply is not very great. So, but when you look at the intricacy of the work and the amount of time and effort and skill that goes into that, you kind of understand why it's a bit costly to procure these chairs right now. So I want to say hello to Sui. He's an 84-year-old gentleman from Montgouge, doesn't look a day over 74, very sprightly young man. So I want to say hi to Sui and to a band of brothers. There are 7 of them that I think I met 4 of them, and they go by Peter Tosh, Marcellus, or Marcellinus, Skippy, Dopey, feelings. So hi to you guys. There are a few other people, but we'll probably get onto them a little later on in the show, because I really want to get into the substantive matter of the show right now. And there's a lady, before I continue, there's a lady that I met, I forget the name right, Mrs. Harding, Mr. and Mrs. Harding. I want to say hello to you guys. Thanks for watching all the time and for keeping me in your prayers and for keeping me in your evoked sets. Awesome. People like you really make me feel good about what I do, and give me the impetus to continue. So thank you so much, guys, for watching all the time, especially little Haley. Now to what we're going to be discussing tonight. Since I was out last week, and since we haven't had an open mic for a while, I thought this evening to push back my guest for this evening to next week, to have a little rapport with you guys, a little rap one-on-one with you guys, and have an open mic. So there will be more time for you to call in. So be at the ready. The number to call is 451989788, and your WhatsApp messages, you can begin to send those so I could get through all the WhatsApp messages. It's 284-6536, and you can begin sending your emails at laurajepe@gmail.com. And the reason why I'm encouraging you to start sending your messages now, except for calling will be done a little later, but you can send me your WhatsApp messages and your email messages, is so that I can actually go through them, because oftentimes we run out of time and I don't have a chance to go through your emails and your WhatsApp messages. The callers take the bulk of the time that we have allotted. So today we'll have more time to call in and to weigh in on what's affecting you, what's bothering you, what are the issues that you want to ventilate and you want to air out, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is the opening of the debate for the estimates, the debate of estimates. Really and truly, we ought not to be surprised at anything that happens in the House. Nothing that happens in the House, in our House of Parliament, should be a surprise to any of us. Because as a nation, we have proved that we have a tolerance, a high tolerance for BS in the House. We have proved as a nation collectively, regardless of what side of the fence that you're on, that we really do not respect honorable places. We do not respect august houses. We do not respect convention, even though we make it a big deal and we make mention of the word convention. We pull it out when it's convenient to us. We say we should follow convention, but I don't know that anything was discovered or anything was bettered going through convention. I don't think Einstein was a conventional person. I don't think Bach was a conventional person. I don't think any of those persons that we hold in high regard, considering them geniuses even, walked down the path of convention to be honored. Derek Walcott wasn't conventional, definitely, nor was Sir Arthur Lewis, sorry, I just had a little senior moment. Neither of our two Nobel laureates were conventional, and we pull them up and we highlight them when it is convenient to us, when we want to make a point that is that is convenient to us, that resonates with us. But we do not look out, we do not look at the men, and we do not look at what they stood for, that they should be honored at the highest level in their respective fields. None of the persons who hold laureates, who are Nobel laureates, were conventional or are conventional. And that is the reason why they were or are at the peak of their game. When we think of movie stars, the best movie stars, the A-list movie stars, are neither plain, obvious, confined by boxes, or conventional at all. So why is it that when we want to shake things up a little bit and to move in a different direction, the naysayers and the opposition, and in this case, I am not referring to political opposition, I'm referring to anybody who opposes any idea, thought process, or procedure, a new procedure, and they want to stay where they are, they will say, well, it's not conventional. It's not the thing to do because it's not conventional. Why do we always want to remain the same and yet expect change? We want to do things the same way over and over and over and over and over and over again. But every time we do the same thing, we expect a different result. And there's a term for that. It's called insanity. Every time we do something the very same way and expect a different result, it's called insanity. So, chaos in the house this week. Last week, rather. Chaos in the house. Now, I was way too young to remember, to recall, to even follow the proceedings in the house at the time the mace was tossed all over the place. I was way too young to remember or even to follow the events in the house when Mikey Pilgrim would have said, I'm going to shoot from my hip and make shit pass through your mouth. I was way too young for that. But the thing about history, especially history that is recorded, it is there so that you can read for your edification. You can follow even though you were not born, or even though you were too young to follow or have an appreciation for it. As long as the annals of history are kept, then you could always go in and read. So all my life growing up, basically, I've heard of those cases in the house where people have disrespected the house. And the last the incidents I would have been speaking about happened in the 70s and in the 80s. And they're the ones that really stick in our minds when we think about disrespecting the house, when we think about negliging the house, when we think about just downright disrespect of the house, defiling of the house. These are what comes to mind. But there's something else, although didn't happen in Parliament, that I would have recalled, and I would have been old enough, and I would have been following current affairs in our country at the time, because I would have been in secondary school, and I had an inquisitive mind, still do. And I would remember, I would never forget the brick glass incident. And you know what I'm talking about, you know, where the two brothers-in-law were going at each other. And I put it that way to show you that sometimes we make a big ado of nothing. We blow things out of, well, not necessarily blow it out of proportion, but we make a big fuss over things, and yet still they're so connected on other levels that we just do not have an appreciation for. And we will raise our blood pressure, and we'll do all sorts of things defending. But at the end of the day, what exactly are we defending? Do we have a firm view on what it is that we're defending? So remember the two brothers-in-law, when they were going at it, and one was telling the other, I'll break glass, and the other one was saying, say it again, I'll break glass, say it again. At the time, I thought it was hilarious. I really thought it was hilarious. But then again, what else did you expect of a 13, 14-year-old at the time? What else did you expect? When everything in our country is a point of hilarity, levity. We laugh at everything. Nothing is serious. Nothing is sacred. Nothing means anything unless it affects us directly. So I remember the brick glass incident, and I remember yucking it up and said, oh my God, can you imagine? Sir John really had one over on Sir Julian because, you know, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, we're going to break glass. And our prime minister at the time is saying, say it again, and gathering the media houses, the media personnel on site at the time to get the sound bites and to get the footage. And I'm going to come back to media houses in a little while. So yes, so these were the other issues that come at the top of my mind. There are other little things like the hungry, where Mary crossed the floor, not in the conventional way that we're thinking when we're thinking of crossing the floor. But yeah, when Mary Isaac crossed the floor inadvertently, and when they asked her why she crossed in the middle of the people's proceedings, and she said, oh, I was hungry. Yeah. So those are some of the events that come to me. But now we have another one to add to it. And I am so appalled. You know, just as much as I was laughing it up at the time when with the brick glass incident, I now think it was horrendous. It was disgusting. A display of lack of filtration, lack of self-control, you know. And what did it impact on in my mind is that at the time, I thought, oh my gosh, these guys have no qualms. These guys have no scruples. These guys have no filtration system. These guys have no self-control. Yeah, ha, ha, ha. And now we have another incident. And it's disgusting on both sides. It's disgusting that the leader of opposition would be leaving, come back to tackle and watching the footage. I'm almost thinking, oh my gosh, he's literally going to jump the table. Not that I haven't seen that happen in other jurisdictions. Jumping the table, you know, and it's smacking each other all over the place, pelting shoes when you can, because these other houses are so much bigger than ours. Pelting shoes when you can't get to the person who is a source of frustration to you, you know, literally fighting and getting on, despicable. And yet on the other side, you're egging on the shameful display of lack of control. I mean, there was our Prime Minister laughing rather than cautioning his minister to ease up. There's a time and a place, you know, laughing it up. And the minister in question, Guy Joseph, I have enough time for Guy Joseph any time of the day, any year, goading the leader of opposition. And sorry to say, I do not have a very high regard for Mr. Pierre, and not because of his contributions in the House, not because of his contributions as a minister of government in the last administration or anything like that. You know, oftentimes people say that your first impression is your lasting impression. What Mr. Pierre showed of himself, the colors that he exhibited last week are the colors that I know. My very first experience with Mr. Pierre was not a very pleasant one. I was a very young woman volunteering at an event, and his lack of regard for me as a young person, a young voter in this country, the way he treated me, the way he spoke to me, the manner in which he held himself, it was a very disgusting manner. It was a very disgusting show of lack of humility. So that has always stuck in my mind. So what he exhibited last week, Thursday, to me is in concert with what I know of him, what my personal experience with him would have been, and not taking away from any other contribution that he may have made towards this country when he was a minister of government or as a leader of opposition. Like I said, oftentimes your first impression of somebody is your lasting impression. So whatever else the person may have done, this is the impression that will always stick in your mind first and foremost. Sorry to say. So I'm not at all surprised by his behavior last week, Thursday. But I should not really be surprised, but I was really surprised that the Prime Minister would have stood around, and any Prime Minister could have been Kenny Anthony, could have been Vaughan Lewis, it could have been Sir John himself, it could have been Stephenson King, it could have been whomever Prime Minister, whomever is the head of this country at the time. I would have been totally disgusted and totally disappointed, because I don't think that this is especially with cameras rolling, I don't think this is a behavior that needs to be out there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're unsure of what I'm talking about, don't take my word for it. Don't try to figure it out. We have a clip. So let's see what's going on. What went on in the House after, mind you, after, thank God for that, after the House had been adjourned, I think, for lunch.
You can't frighten me. You can't frighten me. I don't walk. You cannot. No, you're not frightened. You can't frighten me. Because all I can do, you can't frighten me. You want to see what they're going on? You want to see what they're going on? You go and file a bogus case. You pay $3 million to investigate. You saw me file case. You saw me file case. Did you see me file case? It's a guy, Fred.
And you can hear the laughter. And there's another one that shows him leaving and coming back. And I'm not going to dwell on that. You know, leaving, coming back, and dear Sean, I mean, there is Sean Edward trying to calm his leader, trying to calm down his leader and usher him away and asking him to leave. And you could see in the background, though, I think it was Ernest Hilaire standing there not making an attempt to calm Mr. Pierre down. But Sean, in this other clip, would have been ushering Mr. Pierre out and trying to calm him down, but he was having none of it. He was having none of it. And this is disgusting. This is disgusting behavior. You ought to have known that the tape was still rolling. You ought to have known that everybody in this day and age in 2018 has a video, has a cell phone And every cell phone, every smartphone comes with a camera. You cannot be displaying this shameless behavior and not expect somebody wanting to keep that on for posterity and the salacious and the sensational headlines that it would draw. It was despicable. Despicable. You can hear people in the background laughing. And then what's more discombobulating, what is more mind-boggling, what I cannot fathom is that Mr. Pierre would now come back on television or soundbite or whatever and try to justify his behavior. That's ridiculous. And say you have to defend yourself. Well, it's either you investigated the man or you did not investigate the man. It's either your government, your administration at the time, commissioned a $3 million investigation against Guy Joseph, and I don't think anybody has said, okay, the documents that are now in the public purview, in the public domain, are falsified. It's either you did or you didn't. And if you didn't, there's something called redress in the courts. There's something called libel. There's something called slander. And if it is that Mr. Guy Joseph is saying that you, and I think I'm not trying to infer from what Guy is saying, but my understanding is not necessarily you as a person, Mr. Philip Pierre, but your government, whom you and which was formed by the SLP at the time, whom now you head, commissioned an investigation against Guy Joseph, costing us taxpayers $3 million. Now, I may be wrong in my understanding of the interplay, the play on words there, but this is what my understanding is, that your government, Mr. Pierre, your administration, the last administration, would have commissioned an inquiry, an investigation into Mr. Guy Joseph, and that costed us $3 million. I've seen documents to that effect. I mean, I would really like to know what the heck is going on. I would like for the former administration, members of the former administration, to come out and say what exactly that commission of inquiry was all about. What is it that they hope to find? Why they commissioned the inquiry in the first place? What soupçon did they get to say, okay, we have to investigate this guy. Something, pardon the pun, something is awry here, and so let us investigate. What was that? What was the straw? What was the evidence that you had, that you thought to yourself as an administration that this man had to be investigated regardless of cost? Regardless of cost. We would like to know. I know for sure. I want to know. And so if it is that that investigation was never commissioned, you ought to come out and say point blank, the inquiry was never commissioned, and Guy Joseph is speaking out of his rear end and not from his mouth. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We distance ourselves from the allegations that are made. And to go even further, as to cause him to shut up once and for all and take him to court. Now, on the other hand, Mr. Guy Joseph, if you know without a shadow of a doubt that these guys investigated you and there was nothing coming out of it, come out and say in no uncertain terms, and as a matter of fact, I dare say there must be some redress in the courts. There must be some redress in the courts, because that, to my mind, is malfeasance. Using our taxpayers' money for what? We don't know. Nobody ever came to us and said that they were going to commission an inquiry on what the grounds were for the commission. Nobody ever came out and said to us, now that the inquiry, the commission is done, the inquiry is done, these are the results we want to know. And I even dare say that there are allegations going on that certain key members were saying that they almost had it. Well, almost doesn't count, really. almost doesn't count. And for $3 million, there ought to be something in evidence. There ought to be something in evidence. So when we're talking about all of this brouhaha, this fighting here, I'm not afraid of you, and all of that, hey, take it to the streets. As a matter of fact, Shakes Christopher is always having those boxing matches, and it always seems to be poorly attended or not as well attended as his football matches, like the Blackheart tournaments, right? So maybe you could have a talk with Shakes and to have a brawl amongst opposing factions of government, right? And then take it to the ring. Last man standing wins, and then that's it, done. But don't take it to the House of Parliament, regardless of whether the House was adjourned at the time. It's disgusting, it's despicable, it's a shameless display of leadership on both sides. What are you teaching us young people? What are you teaching the younger ones coming up? Forget me, you know, I jaded enough as it is. But what about the younger ones coming in? This is what we encourage them all the time to take in whenever they can. The debate of the estimates. And this is what it is. This is what it has come down to. First the mace, now this. I mean, I've seen videos of this kind of shameless behavior in different jurisdictions, but never here. This is what it has come down to? Another break glass moment? Really? Now, speaking of investigations, I hear that there are enough investigations to come out, to be commissioned. I want somebody in the government, current administration, to come out and say what those investigations are and why. Don't just take us for a ride, because the days of people being blind followers is no more. We want to know what you're doing. You are there at our behest, not because you implanted yourself, at our behest. We want to know what's going on. I mean, there was the case against Alan Chasney and Ezekiel Joseph. Remember those cases where for Alan Chasney, $38,000 was being queried. $38,000 was being queried. And we deposited in the hands of a big shot lawyer, $30,000 US. Can you imagine? Or was it six? I can't even remember the full amount now, but I know it was something about $30,000 US to recover $38,000 EC dollars. That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense to me. And Ezekiel's I have not heard anything about Ezekiel's case. Then there's the other case of Spider Montooth and Ezekiel Joseph about whether or not they really lost their seats. I mean, seriously, guys, what's going on in this place? Then there's the other case of the $1 million that we spent to investigate what was going on with St. Jude. All I keep hearing is, we have the commission, we have the report. What's in the report? What does it say? What is the outcome? What are we doing? Are we breaking down to rebuild? What are we doing? What is the status of St. Jude once and for all? And let's move towards the decision. It cannot be that we're chichivaying so much. You know, we stick in, like the trainees would say. We are moving forward. We're progressing. This current administration says in the manifesto, affordable health care for all. Not free health care, affordable health care. Granted, let's give that. But right now we have no health care. We have no health care. We're in a stadium. We're talking about the hospital. We're talking about St. Jude Hospital. What was built to replace the burnt part of it, to get it to a point where it is bigger and better and fitting for the people of the South in particular, not just for the people of the South. Because I dare say a hospital is a hospital. And if I were living up north and I felt that the service down south was better, I would come down south to get health care. Okay? And it's not just for the people of the South, because this hospital services our international airport. If there's ever, heaven forbid, knock on wood, ever an incident of ginormous proportions, colossal proportions. Jets were to catch fire or whatever. This is the nearest hospital. This is where they're going to go. So it services more than just the people of the South. And if we're saying what the last administration commissioned does not conform to international standards or to healthcare standards, are we better off in the stadium that is collapsing around us? That the roof is just day by day deteriorating? That we're going to sink more money into the stadium to make it more habitable for healthcare? Does that make sense to you? That doesn't make any sense to me. I understand, I recognize, and I appreciate that what stands right now, what we wanted to make pass as a hospital at the original St. Jude site, I appreciate and I accept, okay, doesn't meet standards. But what we're currently inhabiting right now clearly meets less standards. So let's do something about it. And if we are going to relocate St. Jude from the site that it is, where it is right now, and it's going to be part of the DSH, just come out and say it. The sooner you say something, the sooner you deal with it, the better. It's like having a plaster on a cut or something, like on my arm. Can we get a close-up of my arm? Right? I'm very hairy, right? So if I put a plaster on my arm without shaving off the hairs first, when I have to rip this thing off, I would be bawling like a baby. I would be bawling because all the hairs will be ripped up. Now, if I take that same plaster and I try to move it slowly, I'm in more pain, immense pain, as opposed to if I just ripped it off, one pain, done. So let's just come out and say what it is. Let's just say what it is. Let's just say, okay, you know, we're doing the DSH. We've committed to this DSH. We're going through DSH. Part of this DSH, the plans means that we have to take over the original site of St. Jude. But we feel that we've located an alternate site, and this is where it's going to be, and we're going to rebuild as opposed to anything else. We're going to rebuild on that site. It's going to cost us $150 million. We've already sourced the fund. It's not going to cost taxpayers any money, or it's going to cost us a little bit. Whatever it is, tell us what it is. Let us deal with it right away and then move on. But that back and forth, deal with the backlash right away, one time, and deal with it, done. Moving on. That kind of sticking, juk, it's not working. It's not working for you, it's not working for the opposition. It certainly isn't working for us, the citizens. It's not working. In the same way that we were saying all the time when Alvina Reynolds was the Minister of Health, I couldn't. Let me tell you, this woman had me so disgusted. It was disgusting every time I saw her talking about St. Jude. This is the last Christmas, 2015. This is the last Christmas that you will be spending at this location. Come 2016, we're still there. 2014, this is the last Christmas you will, and it goes on and on and on. Every Christmas would have been the last Christmas that the nurses and the doctors, the practitioners at St. Jude Hospital House in the stadium would have been at the stadium. And every year, it's almost as if there was no shame, like as if there was nothing, you know, like when you want to say something, you know you've done something, or you promised something, you said you were going to do something, and then you were unable, but you made such a heartfelt promise that when it comes time to breaking that promise, you know how you have this thing in your throat and you can't swallow, you feel so bad, you want to cry, your eyes well up with tears, you start to blink furiously, you're not sure what to do, none of that. It's just like, oh, another year, as if we did not remember last year that you had said we were going to be in the hospital for the last time. My nephew is 7 years old. He's turning 8 in October. He was born in the stadium. every year since he was born, we were told that this is going to be the last year. Now we hear it's going to be another 2 years. Another 2 years in the stadium. Ridiculous. And even then, we're not even sure to believe that we're going to be in the stadium for another 2 years because we haven't been told what's going to happen at the original site of St. Jude. Whether we are staying there, whether we're breaking down what was built and rebuilding to specifications, or whether we're moving completely to a secondary site. We don't know. So before the Prime Minister could come out and say that it's going to be another year and a half, I said 2 years, but he actually said another year and a half before St. Jude can be completed or much less commissioned. Let us know what's going on. Are we rebuilding? Are we breaking down to rebuild at the site, or are we building a brand new hospital? And I will never forget, speaking of brand new hospital, back in the day, when a mover and shaker in the then administration said in my presence that St. Lucia is too small to maintain 2 hospitals, that we will never be able to maintain those 2 hospitals, and hence the OKEU hospital still being closed, because we cannot begin to fathom how, and that is the person speaking, we cannot begin to fathom how we are going to fund the operations. So all the time you're hearing people talking blah, blah, blah. Even the last administration knew that the OKEU hospital was going to be an albatross around our necks, despite the fact that we need health care and affordable health care. After all, we are signed onto this UN convention where we have to provide health care for our people. Even though the then administration would have thought to themselves, we must provide health care for our people, they knew that the OKEU hospital was an albatross and that there's no way, in the situation that we had found ourselves then and find ourselves now, that we would have been able to fund the operations of the hospital. And that we would have to be creative and think outside of the box as to how we are going to commission the hospital and to get people affordable health care. Not free health care, St. Lucians, affordable health care. Because we have a way of thinking, bagay government say sanu nuka pay tax, and the very same people, the majority of the people who have this mindset, who have this ethos, who have these ideations, they're the ones not paying the bills. Bagay government say sanu nuka pay tax, nu paka pay PS bill l'hopital. How you think you're going to pay for the best doctors and the best nurses and for equipment, maintenance of equipment, and for medication and supplies? How do you think you're going to wash nuka ipwe? Ek bay moun valley pour remed? Hein? Set li si pa ni koton encore. Pour di ou kay amasse 2 ou 3 koton ek porter l'hôpital ek di mi service ça plutôt ou ka acheter koton porter set li si. Nou pan sa encore. Our resources are very meager. You know, so let's stop thinking that everything government provides for us ought to be a freeness. There's no such thing as a free ride. And even if government were to be able to afford to give us free health care, there must be a piper to be paid. And guess who the piper is going to be? It's going to be us via taxes. Via taxes. That's how it works. So let's not just stay there and say, oh, you know, they have to give us health care. We need health care. You know, I hear a lot of talk about privatization, and I don't know if I was sleeping at the time, or if I was under a rock, if I was out of Ireland at the time, I don't know. But I don't think I've ever heard any definitive word on privatization of either of the hospitals. I've heard a few things bandied around, options bandied around. I've heard the PPP, which is not privatization in and of itself. It's a different thing. And herein lies the hue and cry of most St. Lucians, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. PR of this administration sucks. Sucks. We approach these kinds of things the same way we approach PSAs. So we want to talk about, we want to highlight AIDS. We want to say that there is an increase in new infections, or we want to say that there's a way to keep HIV infections under control. We want to say the ABCs of HIV infections, but we want to do it around we want to do it around HIV, the day observed for HIV awareness or whatever. And we do it for a week, and then after that, all PSAs cease. Yes, there's a cost, but guess what? I am certain if you appeal to the social consciousness of organizations, of the media, you will be able to get those PSAs out. And it's the same thing. There are things out there that we don't have any information on, that speculation for which is rife, and we're not hearing enough from the PR arm, not of the United Workers' Party, who cares, but of the government. And we don't want any spin, because guess what? As I said, the days of blind following, the days of stupidity is over. People understand a lot better than you think. Don't come and try to put a spin on the situation. Tell it to us as is. Let us accept it and say, this is, well, I understand, carry on. Or no, unacceptable, unacceptable, let's get rid of you. But at least you'll be secure in your mind, knowing that you've done the right thing. That you came and you laid the cards on the table and let us know. You know, I used to say, there was something I used to say, I can't afford to have kids. Healthcare in this country sucks. I'm still saying the same thing. It's a risk. It's a risk. Just think about it. You have a mom, a person who's diabetic, or who's hypertensive, or, heaven forbid, who's both, and who's pregnant. Let's just say we have about 4 of these patients at one hospital. Do you understand the kind of health care that they need? And let's just say at least one of those persons is a multiple birth. Can we handle that kind of thing? You know, I heard, I didn't hear, but I read in the paper that Catherine Seelys had said something about St. Jude not having a gynecologist. And that the hospital had to come out and defend and say, yes, they have a gynecologist on hand, or they've got 2. They replaced, one person resigned and they replaced that person, and there's another person coming in. And even when the one doctor who's there is on a day off, there is a doctor on call in private practice who comes in to assist. We need to know these things all the time. We don't need to be hearing by the grapevine that there probably is not a gynecologist or an obstetrician at the hospital. You know, by now I should be hearing this, should be recurring to reassure the people of St. Lucia that whilst you're not operating in the best of circumstances, but that there's something being done, and that we should not just slurp up everything that we hear, because this is what we're going to do. In the absence of information, speculation is king. And we need to stop this habit. We need to, you know, every time you call on somebody and say, I want to talk to you, let's sit down and rap. You know what they say? I don't like the cameras. Damn it. This is not the best of times. It is the worst of times. Forget about, I'm afraid of cameras, I don't like the cameras. You're in a position to talk to the nation, to clarify certain things. By golly, get your little butt to a studio in front of a camera where you can reach the nation en masse and allay the fears and the worries of the people. Oh, NTN. How many people do you know watch NTN? How many people do you know watch NTN? The programming may be what we need, but in the manner in which it is relayed does not resonate with the general public. I cannot count on one hand the number of people that I have asked whether they watch NTN to say, yes, I watch NTN on a regular basis. I cannot count on one hand. Maybe the circles that I'm around, maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but I cannot count on one hand the number of people, and I've asked plenty people that say they watch NTN regularly. That's sad. That is sad. You know, so it's not enough that you stick to NTN. You gotta come out on mainstream television, and that's another thing again, because pretty soon, I swear, people in St. Lucia will not be having any cable in their households. I'm serious. I am so dead serious. I swear that pretty soon St. Lucians will not be subscribing to cable because of the kind of service. You pay for one thing, you don't get it. Channels have been constantly cut. The service is poor. You know, you're paying for premium packages, you're not getting it. You know, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. But you need to come out, government officials, and use I'm certain the media houses, because everybody wants a soundbite. Everybody wants to have the news. So come on out and let us know what's going on, especially with healthcare in this country. Now, speaking of media, now I know I said I wanted to give you more time. Oh, we've got plenty time. We've got plenty time. Although I should be wrapping up pretty soon. Speaking of media, I was shocked, flummoxed to hear what's going on with as it relates to the Minister of Broadcasting. Now, I happened to have heard part of his presentation. You know, a lot of the times you're working and you don't have the luxury of sitting in front of a television or listening into the budget. And, you know, there's no more Radio St. Lucia. I don't know that the other radio stations carry the budget live. And being from the South, sometimes some of the radio stations, the signals, you don't get it at all. For the past few weeks, we didn't get RCI at all. And HTS or Helen FM has been in and out. So that's not even reliable when we talk about media houses, and we want to bash the minister for closing down RSL. Even in the private sector, the private radio stations are not always that reliable, depending on where in the island you are. But I heard the minister talk about, he made mention of a particular talk show, and he segued into regulating the media. Regulating. I didn't hear censure. I didn't hear muzzle. I didn't hear bridle. I heard regulate. That word stuck in my mind. And if I'm wrong, I stand corrected, but I heard the word regulate. And there is a difference between regulating and restricting. And I think we need to have guidelines in any and everything, because human nature, the human nature, it's our nature to just go wild. You give an inch and we go a mile. And I agree to a certain extent. And some of you are going to say, what? What about 361? Is it 361? You're going to correct me, Rick. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. 361, where, you know, that law was repealed because of its censorship of freedom of speech. So some people may say, but you're in somewhat in the media and you're talking about there's a difference to regulating and censoring. There's a difference between regulating and restricting, giving guidelines by which to operate. Even, you know, people say, you know, the language and it's a relative thing, because for what would be offensive to some, it may not be offensive to everybody, and there's all of that. And there's certain language that there's certain stations that I don't watch. There's certain talk shows that I don't watch, because at any point my sensibilities would be offended. Not that whatever the person is saying offends me, or affects me rather personally, but it's just offensive. The language, not what is being said per se, but the language used. So I tend not to forward that. I don't watch. I don't listen in. People call me and say, yo, I make a point of not watching and not listening because the language oftentimes are offensive. Now, some people will say, but Rick uses the F word, he uses the S word, and he uses all different kinds of words. But bear in mind, some talk shows are during the day when you have a wider cross section of the population listening in, and then there's the nighttime talk show where if we're doing our jobs right as parents, most of our kids would be asleep by then. And which is why I make an effort, because I know that I have viewers, people who are watching with their parents, children who are watching with their parents, not on their own, with their parents. So I try my best as possible to use language which is family friendly. And I know a lot of kids know more words, obscene words than I do, but that's no excuse for me to use it. So when it comes to those things, I can understand, I can have an appreciation for where the minister is going. But bear in mind, Mr. Minister, you could be going down a very, very slippery slope. A very, very slippery slope where this is concerned. So you've got to be very, very mindful of when you say regulate, what exactly do you mean when you say regulate, and what form is that regulation going to be taking place? And are there laws already on the law books that can be enforced rather than placing more restrictions or more regulations? Because every time you put a regulation, you're kind of boxing people in a little bit, even though you're not strictly restricting people, but you kind of, you know, we kind of know there is a box. We can step outside of the box, but how much far out of the box we go, then that's another issue. So be very, very mindful of that, because I am one that's not for impacting or impinging on anybody's freedom of speech. I may not agree with what you say, I may not like the way in which you say it, but I don't think that we need to impinge on anybody's rights as media personnel, because a lot of the citizens depend on media personnel, whether it's through a talk show or whether it is through hardcore journalism, which we don't really have anyway, but you know, journalism which is more subjective rather than objective. Objective rather than subjective, right? So this is what we need. So be very, very mindful, because you could be going down a very, very slippery slope. In particular, because you mentioned a talk show before segueing into the regulation, the regulating. Now, I want to move on past what happened last week, the fiasco in the House. Just to say that I heard part of the Prime Minister's contribution, and I did hear when he said the $1,008 million, and everybody, almost everybody, was up in an uproar, and they were, what the heck? What is he talking about? What, $1,008 million? And they say, oh, he could have just, you know, there's no such thing. I heard some people saying there's no such. Yeah, there is such a thing. There is something as 1,000 million and a million. Yeah. And back in the day, the Brits would have said a million billion, meaning a billion, and the Americans would have said 1,000 million, meaning a billion as well. Now I think most persons in the world say 1,000 million, meaning a billion or a milliard or whatever it is. But we make there's so many things happening around us, so many things that ought to be prioritized, and this is what we're making a big fuss on, and all the memes that are going on, it's really ridiculous. But just to say that there is such a thing as 1,000 million, we just don't regularly say it. It's not conventional to say 1,000 million or a million, you know. We don't say 1,000, you know, we say 1,000. But it can be said, just so you know. So it's no big deal. It's no big whoop. The sky isn't falling. We don't need, you know, a strong man to hold up the sky. It's not falling. It's not that big of a deal, guys. It's not that big of a deal. There are so many other things happening right now, like the 4 deaths at Cooleytown that we still do not know anything about. Don't know anything about. We don't know what they drank, how many people were affected. We don't know whether there are any more deaths. There was an investigation being conducted. We have heard nothing more on the investigation. I mean, why aren't we asking about that? Why aren't we asking about that? We don't know. You know? And speaking of investigation, the RG Quarry, that's over a year ago, where how many people? 5 people lost their lives? Is the investigation still going on, or is it completed? And if it's completed, can we hear something about it? People lost their lives. Families are without breadwinners. Mothers are without their children. Fathers are without their children. Children are without their fathers. Wives are without their fathers. Girlfriends have lost their boyfriends. There's a ripple effect here. Can we find out? Can somebody kindly tell us what happened at the quarry? What happened? Who's at fault? Is anybody going to be held accountable? And speaking of explosions and fires, we seem to have a problem in this country when it comes to fires. Months ago, we had 2 fires at the Soufriere Hospital. Nobody has said what was the cause of the fires. The hospital is still being housed at the Itangs Health and Wellness Center. What's going on? 2 nights ago, FRC burned down. Completely. The annals of history, what makes us a people, our culture, our heritage, that's gone. And I remember saying, you know what? I hope that information collected over the years, research done over the years, at least was digitalized and remotely saved. Meaning saved in a location remote from the FRC. And I have been made to understand that digitalization, that's a laugh, much less external remote storage. So it would seem that all the things, all the artifacts and everything, all the history and the research that would have been housed at the FRC is completely gone. And it leaves one to wonder about the plans that PABA had for the FRC, because remember, the FRC was recently renamed the Patrick Anthony Folk Research Center. Are these buildings inspected on a regular basis, especially the old buildings that have history attached to it? Last night I heard Margot Thomas talking about her situation over at the archives and how she has had her own brush with fire, wherein her meter exploded or caught fire. It's easy, you know, for these things to happen. We think just because a place is wired and passes inspection that this is it. But these buildings get old, the wires get old, the technology gets archaic, and it must be repaired or replaced. Are we doing these things? Are we playing with people's lives? Are we playing with people's lives when we let these things slide and we don't make it a priority? It is a sad day for St. Lucia. A sad day for St. Lucia. How many parents took the time off to take their children over to the FRC to see what is there, what is housed there, to have a tour of the place, to immerse themselves in the heritage and culture? How many schools would have taken their children, you know, back in the day when I was a student, every summer vacation or the eve of the summer vacation, just before we went off on vacation, we did tours, class tours, and we visited all these places. We visited Pigeon Point. We visited the museum in Vieux Fort at the time. We visited the FRC. We visited the archives. We visited all over the place. Everywhere we went of historical importance. We would have gone to the Inskilling Monument. We would have gone all over the place where to just immerse ourselves in, and we looked forward to that. We looked forward to that. We wanted to immerse ourselves in our history, wanted to understand, we wanted to touch and feel and smell what we learned in schools. Do we still do these things? By the way, this sort of a museum, I think it was animation center at the Le Palace Carnage, is that still operational? I've been there a couple of times, but I haven't been in recent times. I wonder if it's still in operation. And what is being done to encourage people. I haven't heard anything about it in recent times. So maybe that is something that could somewhat fill in the gaps. Fill in the gaps. So many things that I want to go into, but we're running quickly. I want to give at least half hour for us to really wrap with you. One item of Bravo for me this week is the Sadia Byron situation, where we've been told that a person of interest has been arrested and charged, I would believe, for the death of Sadia Byron. And I hope that they have the right person and that trial is brought, commences speedily, that the person in question gets a quick and speedy trial, and that he's found guilty or innocent, as the case may be. I'm not sure, I don't know, but I want for that case to be a priority for us, and that the person, the perpetrator, alleged perpetrator, brought to a speedy trial, and so that Sadia's family and the community of Labrie can breathe a sigh of relief and say, finally, justice has been served. The same justice that has eluded Valinda Joseph, Mary Ratcliffe, Giselle Georges, and a slew of others. Let us ensure that Sadia's survivors, her children, her 2 little girls and her little boy, can rest assured knowing that their mom's killer is behind bars, that her brothers and sisters and her parents can say, yes, justice has been served for my daughter. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, the lines will be open and we can begin to talk. See you on the other side of the break. And thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. The lines are now open, and the number to call is 4519788. You can send me your WhatsApp messages at 2846536 and your emails at laurajapi@gmail.com. We have our very first caller. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Good evening, Miss Laura.
Hi. Good evening.
I'm wonderful. I'm seeing you. Great show as always. But I am right now even more proud of you, because I am seeing that you are beginning to share the same sentiment with me in the light of it does not matter which government you voted for. But now I am beginning to see that you're putting some pressure on the government of the day.
I've always, on the point, I've always felt that way. Doesn't matter which government which party you support. Everybody has a right to support a party if they so choose. But when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, this is what democracy is all about. You're not supposed to say, okay, well, that's my party, I can't give them beams, or this is not my party. Government is there at your behest, at our service. So I don't really care which government is there, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, I'm going to call you up on it. I've always felt that way.
And I think that we as St. Lucian, we need to begin to get that sentiment that we have to be able to criticize constructively.
That is right.
It is just as you're in a church and the pastor or the bishop or whoever is doing something wrong, The Bible says, a great book, it says that open rebuke is better than secret love. And when somebody is doing something which is wrong, and we call ourselves their friend, I believe we have the right and we have an obligation to pull them and to say, hey, you are going wrong.
Absolutely.
And I am honestly speaking, it's like right now, watching what is going on in Parliament, that is not what we expect as a nation. Especially what went on between the leader of the opposition and Mr. Guy Joseph. And the Prime Minister stood there. He just turned his head and he's just laughing like this is a joke going on. People have to understand, I mean, when the wider world, they watch us, what do they see? What do they make of us? I believe there should be an independent body to really look into those ministers of Parliament. It does not matter whether they are in opposition or they are in position. Because if you are not in position, that means you are on the opposite side. So you are in opposition. But I believe too often the government, even the government of the day, when I watch they come in Parliament and they come to debate something, it's like I keep hearing the same old thing which has happened for 20 years. Grindberg, Rothschild, and all of these things. And like, what we are coming to debate is not being debated in the House. We keep debating the past all the time. Then the opposition, on the other hand, it's like it's a matter of pointing finger at each other. You did this when you were there. Now I am in position right now. It's like you want me to be perfect. But come on, if you during election time you campaign and you say you're going to bring better, don't tell me now that you are in the post, you are in the position where you should act and do better. You are now beginning to do just like the one that they removed to place you in. And that is what I do not want anybody to tell me. If somebody would criticize you, Miss Laura, and they would say you're not doing a good job, and they would ask DBS to, let's like, revoke your license and get you off, I am expecting if they come through, they will do a better job than you. Now, if they cannot do a better job than you, then leave Laura where she is, because you cannot replace her. And too often our government is taking us for a ride. During election campaign, they campaign and they say, I can do better and I will do better. And when the time comes for them to do better, then they begin to draw their finger at the opposition and say, you were there and you didn't do it. So allow me the time. And if I do just like you, then I don't think I should really be blamed because you were there also. That is not what we are going for. I believe our men of Parliament, of Cabinet, the time has come where they should show a higher standard. And I don't even feel I can call these guys honorable, to be honest with you. Because honorable, the title honorable speaks of high honor, high dignity. And the people I am seeing in Cabinet at present, the majority of them, to me, I cannot call them honorable. I'm sorry. But if I have to watch them in the episode, I will tell them I cannot call you honorable because honorable for what? What? How did you achieve that title?
You know, and the sad thing, exactly, that's it. It's almost as if they become a minister, they conferred that title we confer on them the title of honorable, and they don't seem to understand that with the title comes a certain decorum. It comes with a certain responsibility. Even though in your previous life, wherever you wanted to be, welele, you can no longer be that kind. You have to hold yourself up to a certain standard because that is what is expected of you. You can't come in or don't come in at all, because there are those who boycott everything because they cannot get their way, right? You don't come in or don't come in at all, behave like a banshee, behave like a hooligan, and expect to get respect. Respect is not given. Respect is earned. Just because you have a title of honorable before your name does not mean that you automatically command respect. Respect is something that is earned by your deeds, by your actions, by the way you comport yourself. And there's a man, a minister, that no matter what people say, I always look and say, this is to me the last statesman. The last statesman standing, and that is Honorable Stephenson King. No matter what is thrown at him, no matter what comes his way, he always holds himself to a certain standard and goes about. He'll do his little picker, he'll do whatever, they'll heckle him, he'll give a little response, but he does not stray away and goes, no, nothing like that. And I think a lot of these other so-called politicians need to follow the way he handles himself.
Minister Fede is a newcomer in the business. And I think, I don't know if maybe he's watching your show tonight. I would love for him to hear that. He's a little too hot. And I think he should take time and learn the procedure of the House. And instead of coming, and it's like we are coming to throw stones, I believe it's all about building a nation and even building the opposition. There is another minister, Minister Guy Joseph. For too long, I've been seeing this gentleman. I'm not saying that there have not been things said about him. Maybe that is untrue. It is false. But I am seeing for too often, it's like you have certain characters in the House. They're just there for trouble. And every time they stand to speak, it's like they will just be spewing a whole bunch of stuff that will just ignite the fire. It's like they're just coming for that. I am looking at cabinet. I want to see a set of men and women of the country which people have confided in them, put their trust in them, and that when they're in cabinet and you're watching a debate, you're actually watching something of great relevance that the people and the young people of the state can learn from them, and they can say, I want these people to be my role model. Other persons want to call you Mr. Russell. Let them call. But
thank you so much for your contribution.
I want you to do more of that. And if you take you and I and others to begin to organize some demonstration even against the government of the day, which they're not doing their work, I believe it's not about party. Like I said, the government is the government of everybody, but Flambeau or the United Workers' Party is the party of some citizens, and the St. Lucia Labour Party is the party of some citizens. But we have to understand, when it is the government, this is the government of the entire state. And that is what people need to get clear in their minds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. But as I said to the caller, I agree 100% that everybody has a right to any political affiliation. Just don't be a blind follower. Just because you believe in certain things of a party doesn't mean that you have to just go and follow them blindly. Now, there are a few WhatsApp messages that is coming, and while the last caller was talking, somebody asked, so the PM was supposed to intervene, then be accused of taking sides. I don't think the PM should have intervened and castigate Mr. Pierre. Mr. Pierre is the leader of the opposition. The Prime Minister represents the country, and he had a minister serving at his behest in his cabinet, taking on like a hooligan, egging on Mr. Pierre. I feel, and you could disagree with me, but I feel the Prime Minister ought to have said, at least be seen to be trying to calm down his minister. We all know this is not the first time he has said that there was an investigation against him, $3 million and all of that. He said it before. Come out and prove your point. Stop the heckling. Let us see once and for all some definitive action being taken against the former administration, if it is that there was an investigation, that $3 million of the taxpayers' money was used in that investigation, and there is absolutely nothing to show for it. Let your action speak for itself and not just your words. That's what I want to see. So it's not about taking sides. It's not about intervening and taking sides. It's about saying, listen, respect your office, respect your position, respect the House. WhatsApp asked of the previous caller, what's about those ask him about the renegades, criminals who said those things. And like I said, on both sides, we come in on both sides. We come in on both sides. So yes, guy is coming with his and he's a little pepper, you know, and really always sucking it to them. And some people like that kind of thing. Some people like that. But to me, enough. I can only take so much. For me personally, I can only take so much. And I know there are certain people who can only take so much. And just the same way when the former prime minister would have been renegades, when the Speaker of the House, you know, ignoring the Speaker, disrespecting the Speaker, and that's what got my goat. Especially when that same Prime Minister at the time had a number of infractions or accusations levied against him where it concerned female politicians or female women in power. And here it is that we had a female Speaker of the House trying to get the House in order, asking for persons to sit down. And here is the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition at the time, picking up his things, rallying his band of merry men and calling members opposite renegades, criminals. I mean, that has got to be the height of disrespect. So you get it on both sides. So while the previous caller would have said Dominic is a little hot, look what history has given us, the kinds of persons that we have had in Parliament. I'll shoot from my hip and make come out of your mouth. You know, renegades, criminals, all those kinds of things. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. It comes across on both sides. Parliamentarians is to understand what type of day it is. You are holding a position, the highest position in the land. And if we cannot look up to you, who do you think we're going to look up to? And so when the common criminals on the street behave in their true fashion and color, we can't say anything, because you who are supposed to be holding the highest positions in the land, you're behaving like common hooligans. We have another call in line. You're on the air?
Yes, Laura.
Yes, dear.
A very good showman. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And as a woman, I like the fire that is in you. You could lead a lot of women, you know, to be like that. That is very true. You know, I was watching the house, the sitting where that incident took place with the Prime Minister and Guy and them there. And all what you're saying there is so true. But you know, the Prime Minister, he reminded me of something that I saw happen on the beach with the local guys that hustle. You know, sometimes the white people come down, and what they do is that, you know, they see, okay, this guy is selling him a price for that chain. This guy is selling him a price for that chain, something at the back of each other's back, eh? But, you know, he would try to instigate something where sometimes he get the chain for nothing. You understand? Like leave them in their business. Like it's solutions in their thing.
Well, I didn't see it like that, huh? Honestly, I didn't see it like that.
I know, but you know why I said that though? You know why I said that? I'm saying that because what you saw the Prime Minister did, you know, was chuckle, smile with his hand behind his back and getting away from the argument. So as you're saying, if we go in according to body motions and gestures, and that's what I get out of it. Like me, I appreciate myself in that is your two man and is your resolutions hardcore because you're not behaving like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, in regard to Fede now, the way I saw Fede is that this guy had just had, because Modi Speaker let him know, Mr. Minister, we are here to debate the estimate of the budget. You are straying away from this right now. The Speaker went as far as saying he's going to make him invoke his powers on him that, you know, he wouldn't want to do. So, like, just go on with what the topic is. If I'm going to waste my entire day, you know, to sit down and listen to these guys about my country, you think I really want to do that? And this is how these guys are going to waste my time? You understand? Now, as a man now, what you say that you as a man, when I see them and boxers want to box them, man, because, you know, it's as a man, the way men feel. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, if we're going to handle issues, we handle issues. And it's not that I'm promoting violence. You understand what I'm saying? But I mean, testosterone is a kicking and stuff. That's
you know, but there comes a point. There comes a point where you have to. You see, I think the problem is these people take everything personal. You know, because when I listened to Philip Pierre's explanation on why he had that meltdown, is that he was being attacked and he was going to defend himself and the people he represents. Really? I mean, everything is so personal.
Yeah, and that whole scenario, even I'll be honest with you, even in the case of, and I mean, it's not about party, and I'm happy that, you know, that is actually coming out on your show, you know. I mean, I don't have nothing against you, Baldas and Tinanwapene, but I don't know in what country something like that would have happened and he would still be serving. I don't know in what country other than St. Lucia.
I can't recall. I cannot give you the exact, but there have been cases. I'm not making any excuses. I'm just saying that there have been cases where these kinds of things have happened, and it hasn't, unless it crosses the line to being, you know.
But in the public space, I mean, that's why I said I don't know in what country, because they would find on certain ministers' laptops just pictures of strippers, and they would get fired for that. They just fired one in England for that. They searched his personal work computer and the kind of things they saw on it. It wasn't even of him.
But you see, the thing that you see, there's a fine line here. You know, and I don't really want to go into that, but there's a fine line here because pornography is illegal in most countries. So when you have pornography on your personal computer, even if it's not on your work computer, but it's on your personal computer, that's illegal. Now, so there is that fine line.
You see, in regard to what you're saying there, I'm going to use one example in regard to what you're saying there. The minute that you nude yourself in this nude picture, it could still be considered to be pornography, even if it's
but you have to understand, in Ubalda's case, did Ubaldas have pictures of the young lady, or did the young lady have pictures of Ubaldas? And herein is the fine line that we're looking.
And that's where it comes back to us being men. The fine line I see in that, as a big man like you, you know, I mean, that.
But I try not to confuse the moral issue with the legal issue, because let's not forget we've had worse cases of sitting prime minister doing far worse and sat as prime minister for 30 years.
I will agree with you, and if such is the case, then he's not supposed to be prime minister. That's what I'm saying.
Well, he was prime minister for 30 years.
He's not supposed to be. That's what I'm saying.
Not supposed to. He should. But no. I think what you want to say is he should not have been, because that prime minister is dead right now for years now, and he should not have been. But he continued on. But But what I'm saying is he continued on for over 30 years.
Don't come and tell me. Listen to that. I understand. You know, I'm just having a. Don't come and tell me. You in the public, you know, place. You know, it's just like you doing an ad for Nike, like LeBron James. None of these guys could do any of these things, and Nike's still gonna endorse them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand. But you see, the thing about it is, in this case, there's so many different permutations. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but there's so many different permutations, and we have to be guided by the law and not by our moral conscience.
You know how I think that should have been handled, honestly? Mr. Ubalda should have resigned, and if he wanted that case, he wanted to go against the guilds where, how do you call it, the bribery or the, that thing, he could have tackled that case. But in serving in the public domain,
I think a lot of people agree with you.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
I think a lot of people agree with you.
A lot of countries do.
You see, I don't want to. In this case, I don't want to juxtapose other countries, because, like I said to you, there is a difference. There is a difference between what happened, where it comes with legality and morality. And one is very subjective and one is very objective.
I'm telling women, you know what happens? The same thing we're talking about.
Legality, but the legality, there are laws governing these things, and what the gentleman in question you're talking about is wrong. So anyway, we don't want to spend too much time on that. We have other calls and we have a few WhatsApp messages. So yes, thank you so much for calling though. One of my very first WhatsApps I got says, "Hi Laura, it just upsets me to hear people who don't know talk about the archives, both those which were burnt and that which still exists. It is not about money, and that's what upsets me more about what the archive The archivist said, "It is an issue about management and the lack thereof. Did you know that the National Archives is responsible for all public records and archives in St. Lucia, no matter where they may exist? It is an issue about incompetence and the lack of focus. The archives has concentrated on outreach services at the expense of management of records. You should find out what they are doing or not doing towards the management of our records." Well, that's news to me. That's certainly news to me, and I won't continue into the subsequent part because I think it might be a little bit slanderous there. And then there's a person who says, "Are we going to continue or going to blame the Prime Minister for what was going on?" That's absurd because we clearly have no info as to what was said before. And nobody's blaming the Prime Minister for what was said or what was not said. But what I am saying, personally, I think that the Prime Minister should have created some sort of situation rather than be seen to be. It was appalling to a lot of people. How could it not have been appalling to the Prime Minister? This is not a laughing matter. The Prime Minister ought not to be seen to be laughing and yucking it up. Nor are we supposed to be seeing the leader of opposition having a complete meltdown where your member, your colleague, the person that one of the persons that you're supposed to be leading directly is ushering you away and trying to calm you down. And we did see Ernest Hilaire in the background not trying to help at all. And all of this is appalling. So it's not just the Prime Minister. It's the leader of opposition, Mr. Pierre. It is Ernest Hilaire for not trying to usher. And I commended Sean Edward for trying to calm down his leader and bringing him away from the situation. It helped nobody. What was gained? What exactly was gained by this complete meltdown? So forget what was said or what was not said. The fact of the matter is, these people have to be cognizant of the fact that everybody has a smartphone, and every smartphone comes with a camera. And there are a number of incidents where persons have garnered evidence based on that smartphone, where we have seen people being mistreated, people being done so many things, and captured on camera. Be cognizant of that. Have some filtration system. Have a filter, for crying out loud. Have some self-control, for crying out loud. And let's be the bigger person, not because the guy is your man and he's striking cheap political points that you're going to allow him to continue. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And the number of angles, you know, there are lots of different videos depicting what was going on. I mean, seriously, this is the one that happened to come out. It was top of the list, and this is the one that happened to come out. But seriously, it is disgusting, the behavior of all those persons who were present. And mind you, it's not the Prime Minister we heard laughing in the background. We saw the Prime Minister smile, but there are other people in the background laughing it up as if what was going on there is so much. It reminds me of back in the day when I was a student at primary school, and you know, the girls were getting ready to fight, and before the fight we knew two girls had problems at school, and as soon as the principal, the head teacher as we called her at the time, left the schoolyard, you would just say fight, batay. That is how it was. Schoolyard shenanigans. That's ridiculous. Let us hold our leaders up to a higher standard. The same standard that they're holding us up to. Let us hold them up to it. Because with great responsibility comes immense expectation. You wanted a position, we gave it to you. Live up to it. Live up to it. It's ridiculous. Now we're all out of time, and as much as we wanted to wrap some more, we are all out of time. So we have to leave it here. But I just want to leave it to us. I want to leave this to us. We, as citizens, the onus is on us to hold our leaders to a higher standard. We have to hold them up to that standard, regardless of which party that we support, regardless of whether we subscribe to partisan politics. At some point, we have to put that aside. We have to put that aside for the betterment, for the good of our country and our future generation. And we have to hold our leaders responsible for the promises that they make, the promises that they break, and their behavior. This is all the time we have for tonight. But we will have another show, God willing, next week, and I hope to see you then. Until next time, adieu.
You